Hello guys, and welcome back to another educational video with myself. For those of you who are new here maybe, my name is Dominica. I'm a nurse and a functional practitioner, and every week I like to post some educational content around female health. So today I want to talk about things related to PCOS, endometriosis and hypothyroidism. If you have any of those, and even maybe more than one of those, you might be thinking, why do I have so many things wrong with me? Okay, and this is what I'm about to talk to you today. I don't make any sense today, actually. This is what I'm going to talk to you about today. I think that makes sense. Anyway, didn't have a great night's sleep last night, so here's for the bags. But anyway, let's dive in. PCOS, endometriosis, hypothyroidism, they are all different conditions and they are often treated very differently, okay, with different medications, different specialists, different conversations. But what if they're not separate at all? What if they are actually connected on a deeper level through immune dysfunction, through inflammation, gut health and hormone regulation? So today I'm going to talk about what's connected between PCOS, endometriosis and hypothyroidism, or Hashimoto's more so. And some of what I'm going to say today will probably change your perception on how you viewed your body and your conditions. First of all, you are not unlucky. A lot of these women that have one condition will often collect another one. For example, PCOS in your early 20s, then you'll get endometriosis a little bit later, and then thyroid issues in your late 20s to early 30s. And you'll just be told, well, that's just bad luck, isn't it? It's really not. But statistically, these conditions actually overlap a lot more than people think. There is a pattern to it, and the pattern is very rooted. When we look at hormonal imbalance, immune dysregulation, immune resistance, chronic inflammation, and gut problems. So let's start with the thyroid. It's a little bit simpler to look at that from that perspective first of all, because your thyroid isn't just about your metabolism, okay? It's about your hormones, it's about your ovulation, progesterone production, estrogen, sex hormone binding globulin, which is your SHBG, and insulin resistance. And I've often speak about this in all my other videos, but when your thyroid levels are low, especially your T3, you'll see things such as irregular cycles, anovulation, heavy or painful periods, PMS, and low progesterone very often, which is something that I struggled with for a long while before I actually got my hypothyroid diagnosis. Now, what does low progesterone create? It obviously creates estrogen dominance, okay? We don't have that balance because progesterone is low and estrogen is high. And what does estrogen dominance correlate to? Often PCOS patterns and endometriosis progression. So already just by looking at that, we can see that the thyroid is sitting very much so upstream. Now, if we look at PCOS, it is not just your ovaries and it's not just about cysts. And I see this time and time again, you know, women getting misdiagnosed because they have cysts or they don't have cyst. That is not the case. And the other aspect that we often look at with PCOS is just testosterone, with testosterone being high. Again, that is not just one marker that we can look at with PCOS, all right? It's a little bit more complex now. Often women with PCOS, yes, they can have high testosterone. Yes, they can have cysts, but they will often also have chronic low-grade inflammation, insulin resistance, elevated androgens, and quite often irregular ovulation. Now here is the nitty-gritty interesting part. Insulin resistance impacts your thyroid function. High insulin will reduce SHBG, so your sex hormone binding globulin, increase your free testosterone, and it can play with your thyroid function as well. And what I mean by playing with your thyroid function is the conversion from T4 to T3. And hypothyroidism can often worsen insulin resistance as well. So them two kind of go hand in hand. One can break the other and vice versa. And that's where we can see the big feedback loop that's going round in circles, where thyroid dysfunction worsens insulin resistance. Insulin resistance then worsens hormonal imbalance, and hormone imbalance worsens ovulatory function. Moving on to endometriosis, we want to look at the immune and estrogen connection. Endometriosis is inflammatory and estrogen driven. However, it's also immune mediated. What that means is that your immune system fails to clear endometrial-like tissue outside of the uterus. Now, how I want you to look at this or think about this is Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease, which often means that the immune system is often already, well, it is already dysregulated. And women with one autoimmune condition, statistically, prone to having another autoimmune condition. And that's because your immune system, if you have Hashimoto's, is already more reactive. So if you add gut permeability, chronic stress, environmental toxins, and estrogen dominance, you create a terrain where inflammatory conditions like endometriosis can develop. Again, this isn't random, it's very systemic, isn't it? Once you start piecing the puzzles together, it makes more and more sense. Now let's look at the gut, because the gut is the missing piece of the puzzle, and that's where 70% of our immune system is. This is why it's super important to have a healthy gut. So when we look at the gut influences a lot, and we already know this. The gut influences the estrogen metabolism, immune regulation, which is what I already said, where 70% of the immune system is within the gut, thyroid conversion from T4 into T3, inflammation levels, and insulin sensitivity. So if gut permeability increases, which is also known as the leaky gut, then immune activation is more likely to increase. And what immune activation causes? Well, it triggers autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's and other ones. It will worsen pelvic inflammation for those with endometriosis, and it will impact the metabolic signaling in people with PCOS. So when I see women with painful periods, bloating, fatigue, brain fog, acne, struggling to lose weight, it's not that there are all separate problems going on. We are looking at one interconnected network that is working together to cause all these problems. I talk about stress a lot, okay, and there's a reason behind it, because it has a huge effect on us as females and everyone else, but females are a lot more prone to having chronic stress, and we are sensitive souls, sensitive creatures, so it's going to affect us that little bit more. What chronic stress does is it suppresses ovulation, it lowers your progesterone, impacts your thyroid conversion, impacts insulin sensitivity, and increases inflammatory markers. So as you can see, I am repeating myself, but all of these conditions do very much so the same things, and that's what makes them link together. So if you're overtraining, undereating, not sleeping enough, you're affected by stress all around you emotionally, obviously cortisol, which is your stress hormone, is going to increase. And if you're in that fight or flight constantly, then you are in a bubble of chronic stress. And then what you do is you are amplifying every single one of these conditions. And this is why for a lot of you, these quick fixes won't work, like your Slimming World, your harsh calorie diets, 8-week plans. None of this is going to work, because the nervous system is a bigger part of the picture. And the reason why you were probably told that these are all separate is because conventional medicine is very outdated. They don't look at the bigger picture. They look at a disease on its own. They don't look at the things surrounding it. If we look at, obviously, specialities, right? Endocrinologists deal with thyroids, gynecologists deal with the female health, like your ovaries and your uterus. And obviously your GP is just a general practitioner that looks at your symptoms, and 9 times out of 10 will just put you on paracetamol. But how we need to look at this is that the endocrine system is one network. The immune system is one network. But the gut interacts with both of those networks. And what you need to remember is that your body doesn't separate itself into categories the way that medicine makes us separate everything. And this is exactly why so women go misdiagnosed, and why they're struggling and feel like they're getting the lack of support and like they're not getting anywhere with anything. Now, I want to make something clear. Not every woman with PCOS has Hashimoto's. Not every woman with Hashimoto's has PCOS. Not every woman with endometriosis has Hashimoto's either, or vice versa. But the overlap is significant enough that we should be screening for these things if you are doing everything right and you're still not seeing improvements, because there could be further underlying issues. And this doesn't mean just start popping all the pills and taking all the supplements and doing all these random protocols. What we need to do is think a little bit more upstream. How is your blood sugar regulation? How is your gut keeping? Are you keeping it healthy? Do you have any symptoms? Are you ovulating consistently? Is your cycle regular? Are you converting T4 into T3 efficiently? Is inflammation being addressed? Is stress being addressed? There are so many things that we actually need to look at. And what I need you to understand is that you cannot medicate inflammation. You cannot put in a supplement and all of a sudden things will just disappear. You need to get down to the root cause of why this is being driven. So if you have PCOS, endometriosis, or thyroid problems, even just one of them or all of them, you need to look into things a little bit further. Now, obviously, I have my thyroid school education community, which is linked below this video, where I explain everything thyroid related, from nutrition to training to root causes to simple logistics of the thyroid, explaining the blood work. You know, that's there for education. If you are struggling and you feel like you've had lack of support from your practitioners, endocrinologists, GPs, gynecologists, and you need further support, then obviously don't be scared to reach out either on Instagram at definedbydom, visit my website at definedbydom.com, or I have linked everything below as well for you to be able to get in contact with me. But I hope this was useful, and I'll see you next week for another Educational Friday with Dom.